had a real.
Yep, you are.
Really
Okay, would you like me to manage this then?
Yes, please.
Hand glasses. Caught the man the pancakes yet? Y'all had to grind the wheat and
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning. I know Debbie. I didn't know Debbie.
Welcome to the Tidewater Libertarian Party breakfast meeting. It's the third Saturday. As you know, we meet the first and third right here at Mom's Kitchen, 3501 Holland Road, Virginia Beach, Virginia. And the proud owner of this place, or the husband seems to think that he runs this place, but this is the real boss standing here in the doorway. And Lara, everybody's complimentary kitchen breakfast this morning, right? You're paying for all of it. Okay, thank you. Let's give her a hand right across the mouth. No. Anyhow, that's a little joke. Bad joke. We got a packed agenda. We're a couple minutes late because we had some technical difficulties. And so if everybody would rise, Kenny Golden normally does the invocation, but for some reason Kenny's not here, so I'm going to count on the only other Christian I know in the room this morning. That's Councilman John Moss.
He has it.
Councilman Moss. I caught him off guard.
If you all would remain standing at the end for the pledge. Dear Lord, we gather here in your name with your blessing. We ask for your humility and your wisdom. Keep us in good health. Watch out for our men and women in harm's way. Protect the liberty you granted us. And all things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we'd like to ask Ron Axel to come up for our weekly our homage to a fallen veteran.
On this 20th day of March 2021, as a retired submarine sailor and member of the Tidewater Libertarian Party, I'm proud to honor the memory of submariner Lawson Patterson Ramage, nicknamed Red. Ramage graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1931. During a wrestling match at the Naval Academy, he injured his right eye and failed to pass the submarine eye exam. But determined to be a submariner, Red memorized the eye chart and prevailed. In 1942, Red Ramage assumed his first command, the USS Trout, SS-202. Under his command, the USS Trout conducted 4 war patrols. He damaged the Kyokyu Maru, the Nishan Maru, and sank the Hiratama Maru. The word Maru, meaning circle, is often attached to the Japanese ship names. The term is used in divination and represents perfection or completeness, or the ship has a small world of its own. The myth of the Hakuno Maru, a celestial being that came to Earth and taught humans how to build ships. In 1943, Ramage assumed the command of the Vallejo-class submarine, the USS Parchi, SS-384, which was part of the U.S. submarine Wolfpack, along with the USS Bang and the USS Tenosa. The sub-Wolfpack sank 7 enemy ships, and Red Ramage was credited with 2 of them. In 1944, the Wolfpack made contact with an enemy convoy. In the dark hours before the dawn of July 31st, 1944, Ramage cleared the bridge of all personnel except himself and steamed right into the enemy convoy on the surface, maneuvering among the ships and firing 19 torpedoes. Wow. Japanese ships fired back with deck guns and tried to ram the Parchi. With consummate seamanship and coolness under fire, Ramage dodged and twisted, returning torpedo fire for gunfire. The Parchi sank 2 enemy ships and badly damaged 3 others. For this action, Commander Ramage became the first living submariner to receive the Medal of Honor, which was formally presented to him by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. In 1963, Red was promoted to Vice Admiral and became Deputy Chief of Naval Operations. Vice Admiral Lawson P. Ramage was awarded the Medal of Honor, 2 Navy Crosses, the Silver Star Medal, and the Navy Distinguished Service Medal. In further recognition of his life service and heroism, a guided missile destroyer was christened the USS Ramage, and in 1990, the submarine training facility located in Norfolk was commissioned and named Ramage Hall. I had the privilege of attending that ceremony, and I am a plank owner. Vice Admiral Lawson P. Ramage Red was in the Navy from 1931 to 1969. He died on April 15th in 1990 and is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Thank you. And now for the national anthem.
And if everybody would just remain silent during the singing by Mr. DeBoard. Turn it around. Blue field, left side facing. Thank you very much.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
And Angela, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sorry. That wasn't my decision.
Okay, we've got an extensive meeting this morning with a lot of controversial items. Before we get into those, the red flags that everybody received a copy of, we have a candidate for a lieutenant governor, and we're going to ask Angela Shalou if she'd like to come up and introduce him. And then we'll kick it off, and Kirk Cox will be coming here shortly. But after Angela, we will get into the red flag issues. So, Angela, if you'd like to come up, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Shalou. I know some of you all here, but it's been a while. There's a few familiar faces here, but good to see you all. I know that we were expecting Kirk to be here a little bit ago, but he's not here yet, so we'll go ahead up and bring Lance Allen up, who's running for Lieutenant Governor. He hails from Northern Virginia, so I know a lot of you probably haven't met him yet, but he's been down here a time or two and really anxious and really excited about running for Lieutenant Governor. He's a 10-year veteran from the United States Air Force, and he has an intelligence background, and so I'll let him come up, kind of introduce himself, tell you a little bit about himself and why he is running for Lieutenant Governor. Thanks.
Thanks, Angel. I appreciate that. All right. I want to be respectful of your time. You guys all came here for other reasons. I just showed up and crashed your party. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to treat this like an intel briefing. We're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it quick, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about myself. I'm going to tell you very quickly about myself, a little bit of background. I think you deserve to know the people that are running and where they come from. It helps, right? It's our character that matters. Number two, I want to tell you about some of the issues that are important to me. And number three, I'm going to wrap all that up real quickly and try to take a couple of questions because I really want to talk about what's important to you. All right, a little bit about me. I grew up in the Onion Fields of South Georgia. My grandfather took me in when I was 6. My father was murdered. And my mom, who was a victim of domestic abuse, struggled. 4 kids on her own. My mom, sorry. Ugh. I've been telling this story too much. My mom was my superhero. She worked 3 minimum wage jobs back when minimum wage was less than $5 an hour. So my mom will always be my superhero. But my granddad stepped in really when no one else would. My one going joke is my grandfather knew what child labor laws were. He just really didn't give a damn. We spent most of the mornings picking and planting onions, and we spent most of the evenings picking and planting onions. We were not rich. To say we were dirt floor poor is a little bit of an understatement. You don't make a lot of money in onions. You don't make a lot of money in farming. That's why my grandfather wanted me to get an education, but we didn't have any money for it. He had already put several kids through college. He didn't have any money for grandkids through college. So I joined the Air Force straight out of high school. I did 10 years in the Air Force. I'm thankful for my service. I was an intelligence operator. I did everything from counter-narcotics. I know firsthand the crisis across our border, as well as South America. It all starts from there and works its way up, by the way. We're so busy. We're so busy talking about letting people come across our border that we're not even focused on the real problem. We're not even focused on the drug trafficking. We're not focused on the violent crime in South America and Mexico. We're not focused on the fact that with an open border policy, it's incredibly easy. I think just a few weeks ago, and I'll stop talking about this, just a few weeks ago they rolled up 7 Iranians who came across the border in Arizona. We have a problem, and I don't think this administration cares to do anything about it, but enough about that. I did counterterrorism and homeland defense. After that, I've done everything from warheads on foreheads, taking out bad guys, protecting troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, and lastly, and probably most importantly, advising some of the most senior policymakers, even right upstairs in our nation's capital, on how to keep Americans safe. Yes, if you ever flew while I was in the Air Force and you experienced a long wait time in TSA or had to give up the iPad and laptop, I am the reason that happened. I am sorry. I won't be the reason for that anymore. All right. I left the Air Force with 5 degrees. I felt like I did my grandpa proud. I took advantage of every benefit offered to me by the federal government in my service. More importantly than all of those things, I am a father and I am a husband. I tell people all the time, don't ask me what I am, ask me why I am. I have spent 32 years on this earth, and that's long enough to hear politicians tell me they're pro this, they're pro that, they're anti this, they're anti that. I get it. Then they all go to the Capitol. Doesn't matter what Capitol it is. They vote completely different from the way they promised you and I they were going to vote. Then they come back and they stand in front of us at these breakfasts and our meetings, and they say, well, you guys just don't understand the legislation. You're too ignorant. You couldn't possibly understand the way politics is supposed to work. I call bull. I call bull on that. You said it, I didn't. Just wanted you to know I heard you. All right, what's important to me? I'm a pro-life candidate. I said I wasn't going to tell you what, but why. My son was born 2 weeks ago. My son was just as important on the inside of my wife's stomach as he was when he came out. He spent 24 hours in the NICU. He's had 2 surgeries to remove tissue from around his lungs and just various parts to help him breathe easier. He had trouble and we thought we were going to lose him. It was a rough time. But we came out all right. He was just as important on the inside of my wife's stomach as he was when he came out. I did not talk to a bag of uterine contents for 9 months. I talked to my son. His name is Archer. That's a Ralph Northam quote there, by the way. Our nation's only physician doctor. And he is holding true to form. He is helping terminate the patient that is Virginia quietly. And we have to stand up and say something different. I'm pro-Second Amendment. Why? Listen, one of the most dangerous things that we can do is give up our constitutionally guaranteed liberties. And let me tell you why pro-Second Amendment means so much to me. One of the hot topics in Virginia and across the nation has been red flag laws. You cannot call yourself a true conservative and support red flag laws, and let me tell you why. It has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. It has everything to do with the fact that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights subsequently, is a wall. One defines what government can do, and the other says government shall not go here. You do not get to go any further. We don't negotiate these rights. You can call it reform, you can call it education, you can call it whatever you want, but the fact is you don't get to talk about it. Now, if you want to have a conversation about changing the Constitution, we can. You'll lose Monday to Sunday, but I want to be fair. That's the conversation that you really want to have, which is how to take away my rights. The same people who are reporting you on Facebook right now as extremists and domestic terrorists and racist are the same people who will call and report you as an extremist and domestic terrorists so that they can come and take away your guns. And my friend, this is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democrat issue. This is an everybody issue. My rights are your rights. And when they're done silencing me, when they're done taking my firearms, they won't stop there. It's a little thing called precedent. Once we allow that law to happen, where does it stop? Councilman Moss?
Yeah.
I don't know you very well, but I would like to. But this is the problem that we're having. I could, right now, say I don't like you. I don't like what you say. I don't like what you do. I don't like the way that you look. Now, I don't think any of those things. I think you're a wonderful man. That's to be fair. But I could say all of those things, and without any proof, the government could come and take your property away from you. That's the conversation that we're having. We're not having conversations about extremism and domestic terrorism. Let's have those conversations. And we can have those conversations without infringing on the rights of law-abiding, God-fearing citizens. All right. I talked way too much about all of those things. Just two more things and then I'll stop. And I'll take a question or two if I have time, sir. Number one, everyone's going to tell you open businesses. Yeah, I get it. Open businesses tomorrow will not solve the problem in Virginia. We've been on a slow death crawl of businesses across Virginia for over 8 years now because of failing Democratic policies. Here's why. The numbers don't lie. Virginia small businesses make up 97% of employers across our Commonwealth. But for 8 years straight, that growth was flatlined. It was a patient that died on the table. COVID-19 was not the problem for businesses. Don't get me wrong, lift the mandates, get out of their way, but lift the regulations and allow businesses. Someone told me the other day 1 in 6 small businesses will close their doors in 2020 and 2021 and never reopen again. Yet our governor stands in front of news conferences live and laughs about the number of small businesses he helps close down. It's an absolute shame. So yes, open businesses lift mandates, but also lift regulations and lift policies that restrict businesses from being able to do the things they need to do to survive. These are not some mythical creature off in the distance that we talk about. These are our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents, our brothers, our sisters. They are trying to take care of a family. Number two, open schools. You'll hear every politician tell you, even the Democrats will tell you, we need to open schools. Okay, great. You open schools tomorrow, it will not solve the problem in Virginia. Our education system is broken. Again, the numbers do not lie. We are, we are ranked 49 out of 51 in terms of competitiveness across the nation. Okay? That quality of education, curriculum, and teacher pay. We rank 49 out of 51. There's a problem here, folks. Number two, the racist curriculum that we're pushing out to our children right now, and yes, I'm talking about critical race theory, where you teach my children that they inherited racial guilt. In Fairfax County, they proposed an idea where children get to wear a pin that tells them how guilty they need to be. Yeah, yeah, you did the same thing I did. I said, not my child. You put a pin on my child, I'll come put a pin on you. We'll have a problem. I believe in standing up for our rights. The young lady over here asked me, and she's gone now, so you ladies will have to tell her I answered her question. The young lady over here asked me, how am I different from every other politician? Because I don't bend the knee. You cannot call yourself a true conservative and not stand up for conservative values or principles. 8 years ago, a decade ago, we had all the power in Virginia. We had the legislatures, the legislative chambers. We had all 3 statewide offices. How did we lose them? We lose them because we thought that if we compromised our values that we could keep our power. Folks, that is the wrong attitude to take. That is how we lose, and that is how we end up where we are today. All right, I'll stop talking now. Please, ask me a question, anybody. What you got for me in the back, ma'am?
First of all, I want to thank you for your service, for fighting for our freedoms, the right to be here. But we hear a lot of politicians talk exactly how you're talking.
Yeah.
But when we go to gun rallies, Tuesday night there's a school board meeting to stand up for one of our Republican, our conservative school board members because they're being attacked for what they believe in. You don't see people out. We don't get, where have you been for the last century? I assume you're retired. What have you been, what gun right rallies have you been? What have you done out there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fair question. You want somebody who'll get in the trenches with you. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. So one of the most important things to me is Lobby Day that I believe has been taken away from us, and that's not just 2A. I believe Lobby Day should be every day, by the way. I just feel that way. We should take away the ear from people who have money and special interest in lobbyists. That's just the way I feel about it. But I was at Lobby Day 2 years ago. I was at Lobby Day last year. I was at Lobby Day this year. Even though they canceled it, I was out there on the street because I believe in our constitutional liberties. I've been very involved in local politics in my local party in Fauquier County. So I stood right outside of the Board of Supervisors when we begged our Board of Supervisors to make us a constitutional sanctuary. I was right there alongside of everyone. I was right there alongside of the folks in Fauquier County when we stood up and said we don't want deep equity in our schools. One of the things that is most important to me is local politics. We have red counties all across the state of Virginia. I was in one red county not too long ago, and I won't say which one. It's a completely red county. You don't get any redder than this. Every school board member was a Democrat. How do you get there? Because you don't pay attention to local politics and you don't come out. So I was one of the first ones to jump on the bandwagon. When we had a school board seat open up, we recruited one. Now, she's my friend, Susan, by the way. She is not my friend right now. She doesn't like me very much. But that's what we do. We go out and we recruit people to run. We recruit people to stand up for our values. It's not just about getting involved. Ronald Reagan used to say, and yes, I invoke the name of Ronald Reagan in a conservative meeting. I know. But Ronald Reagan used to say it's our responsibility to participate in this thing called politics, whether we vote, whether we volunteer, or whether we pick up the mantle and run for public office ourselves. And so I would say to people I would say to you the same thing that I say everywhere else. Be the change that you want to see. And that's the answer that you should look for from every politician. If I'm not out there with you in the trenches, how could I possibly ever stand here and tell you that I'm going to defend you in the Capitol? Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Yes, ma'am. What do you got for me?
What is your strategy or policy as lieutenant governor on how to change or eliminate this race theory from education?
Yeah, that one's easy. School choice. Let me say it again. School choice. Andrew, I know I gotta go. I see Andrew over here going TikTok on his time. I gotta know speaking of that. But let me ask you a question. This will only take a minute and I'll be done, I promise. Let me ask you a question. Who here has children or grandchildren in the public education system? Yeah. All right. Now show of hands if you feel like your children or grandchildren got a quality education in that public education system. You can shout no, that's fine too. No is right. Why on earth do we consistently believe politicians when they tell us that government is the solution to our problems? I just don't get it. Because they're not. Imagine a world, right, where schools had to compete for your business the same way businesses do, right? Where the best school, where the best teachers, where the best curriculum had to fight for you and your children. And the best ones excelled. Right now in Virginia, and again, the numbers don't lie. You can't make this. Does it go away?
You went away.
All right. The numbers don't lie. You can't make this stuff up. Half of every dollar that you pour into taxes that goes to the public education system in Virginia goes to a failing institution. Not a teacher, not curriculum, not education, a failing institution, a failing administration. Why am I propping up failing institutions? They should go away. If you can't fix them, more money is not going to fix that problem. You know what's going to fix that problem? Giving parents and children the right to take their child where they want to go, regardless of where they live, how much money they make, or who they are. This is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. This is a my rights are your rights. Every life matters, and your children are just as important as my children. That is the conversation that we should be having. I hope I answered your question. I'm very passionate about it, and I think for far too long we've been weak on school choice. And this is not a Republican issue. This is an issue that we should be grabbing the banner and running outside and say, your children matter. Can I take one more?
Yes.
Andrew? She raised her hand first. Can I take this one? I'll come right back to you. Yes, ma'am. I'll do 2 and then I'll stop, Andrew. Yes, sir. I hate to say it, but yes.
Let me go.
I am.
All right, so let's address this issue that we're in Southern Virginia. And Southern Virginia does not get the representation in Richmond that it needs. How are you going to give us in Southern Virginia what we need against those in Northern Virginia?
Yeah.
Amen.
I love that question because I love Southern Virginia. I hate telling people I'm from Northern Virginia. I really do. I'm from a small town called Marshall, Virginia. I think the population may be 300. I don't know. Maybe more. Maybe a little bit more. I love a small town. My wife and I met at the Red Truck Rule Bakery right there on Main Street in Marshall about 9 years ago, and we didn't even know it when we bought our house, and that's where we ended up. All right, I want to answer your question, not tell the story. I had to get some brownie points for my wife. I hope you don't mind. Listen, the worst thing politicians can do and have done for the past more than a decade in Virginia politics is come to Southwest Virginia or Southern Virginia or even Central Virginia, anywhere that's not Northern Virginia, and tell you, hey folks, you know what? I'm not from here, but I know what all your problems are and I know what all the solutions are. I'm going to solve all of your problems. How ridiculously arrogant. Yes, right. Thank you. Oh yeah, there we go. I like yelling. I got my military voices coming back a little bit. Hoorah. All right. All right. So the question is, how do I plan to represent anything that's not Northern Virginia? For far too long, Northern Virginia has controlled everything in Virginia. I'll give you one statistic and then I'll answer your question, I promise. I'm a little long-winded, but I'm also running for politics, so you get what you get. All right. Right now, we rank 35th in the nation in terms of infrastructure. We spend billions of dollars in Virginia on infrastructure every single year. We have one of the nation's highest transportation and infrastructure tax funding bills. Okay, yet we rank 35. And do you know why that is? Because we focus on one small area of Virginia. And by the way, those projects never get complete either. I'm right there with you. They never get complete. So, what's my answer to this? My answer is the same thing that it always has been in politics. I'm running for politics not because I have the solutions and not because I have the answers. I hate a politician come to my town and tell me, Lance, I know what your problem is. Lance, I know what you need. Lance, I'm going to solve your problem. No, the hell you don't. You don't. No offense at all, but you don't. You couldn't possibly understand. So I'm not going to stand here in front of you today and tell you I know what your problems are or how to fix them. What I will do is say that what we as politicians, what we as elected representatives should try to do, and I think you would probably agree with me here, is go to those areas and talk to you. When's the last time you saw a lieutenant governor do anything except defend himself from sexual harassment claims? We have a governor that has lived in Virginia his entire life and has never been to Culpeper County. He's also represented the state for 3 years and has never been to Culpeper County. There are 95 counties in Virginia. You should go to every one. I don't expect you to know all the problems. I don't expect you to have all the answers, but you should at least be willing to sit your derriere down and listen to what people have to say, and then go fight in Richmond, not to solve their problem. Government is not the solution to your problem. It'll cause 12 more problems before it fixes the one. But fight to get the people the resources that they need to solve those problems. I gave you the transportation and infrastructure numbers. Why did I do that? Agriculture is a billion-dollar industry in Virginia. It is the biggest industry, but nobody wants to talk about it because it's not tech, it's not government contracting, it's not sexy. Listen, it props up this state. So if you're going to have one of the highest infrastructure pieces of tax legislation in the entire nation, how about you do things like fix roads and bridges so farmers can get their products to market? How about you do things like lift regulations and restrictions so, again, farmers can get their products to market? There's an entire industry in Virginia that we're neglecting that's statewide. So, I'm sorry, long way around. Let me close it back up. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to solve all your problems, but I promise you, if I'm your first choice, if I'm your second choice, if I win the nomination, if I don't win the nomination, I will be the first person to stand up and say, don't go to an area and tell them what they know. Don't go to an area and tell them what you think you can do. Go to an area and ask them what they need. And I promise that's what I'll do. Okay.
That's it.
Last question, and I have to be done. Yes, sir.
Lance,
I'll make this one brief, sir. I promise.
Don't
Yes,
worry
sir.
about Robert.
I love you, Robert.
He's a Penguins fan. We forgive that. At
Yes,
any
sir.
rate, I heard you talk about school choice.
Yes, sir.
I like parental choice better. I
Yes.
think we need to empower suburban women and women all over this state to be able to say, here's where I want my kid to go to school.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely important. In addition to parental choice, what other programs would you want to bring in to go along with that to get our kids into the schools they want to be in?
Yeah, so just a little expand here, and I'll take 30 seconds and I'll be done. When it comes to school choice or parental choice, you're absolutely right. School choice is maybe not even the right word to use. I like parental choice, right? Because what if I want to homeschool my kids? We should do a better job of taking the money out of public institutions, giving it back to parents. I want you to homeschool. I want you to public school. I want you to a public magnet school. The idea that I can take a child who's coming out of middle and high school and I can hone in on what they love to do, get them off the streets in suburban and urban areas, and give them a passion and a trade and something they feel like they have a future in. So public magnet schools, all for them. Private schools, again, they're so expensive right now. Why? Because the public education system sucks so bad. Again, imagine a world where schools had to compete for your business and not the other way around. Right now, you go to a private school, somebody asked me, are your kids in private school? I said, no, brother, I can't afford that. But right now, you have to compete for their business. It's true. You got it. We tried one time to get my son in a Christian school, and I remember we went through 3 rounds of interviews. And at the end of it, I mean, if the money's not there, the money's just not there. I love my children. I want them to have the best education possible. I still feel bad about that. But it's just what it is. So those are the things that I would like to see done. Okay, I'm sorry. Thanks so much. Find me online at lanesforda.com. Find me on Facebook at Lance Allen for Lieutenant Governor, and please reach out. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, buddy.
I'm sorry for being so
Oh, no
long.
problem at all.
John, how many more times do you think you're going to be picked on this?
The next thing on our agenda today is this list of subjects up here under the red flags. And I would encourage you, if you see something up here that's missing, please send it to me. But what we need is to form organizations for each one of these items. Now let's start at the very bottom on this. Stopping racism is pretty simple. Just quit talking about it.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much division going on, right, Connect, y'all? And if you don't like what that says there, he did it. So it wasn't me. So that's where we need to be in this nation. We're continuing to tear ourselves apart. So Connect, do you have 1 minute? Did you like to say anything on this?
Go ahead.
Come on. You just got dressed up for me today, didn't you?
No, it's every day, man. That's what I'm going to the gym.
Yeah, you're online too.
I'm online. All right. Islam. Peace and love. So yes, I guess stopping racism. Yes, pretty simple once we're talking about it. So racism. I've talked about this subject plenty of times. I think the confusion that we have is people think race is colors, and they think that people are black and white. So one way that we can help end racism is just by promoting the truth, which is the only race on earth is the human race. So, and the thing about the human race is divided into different groups, which are simply nationalities. So that's why we promote to teach nationalities so we can learn about the history, the culture, the heritage of all the different members of the human race, where we from, and our foremothers and our forefathers, so we can honor them. So y'all didn't know I'm Moorish. I'm not a black man. I'm not African American nor Negro colored, and there's no such thing. And on our side, as far as our group of people who keep getting categorized as that, this is where our conflict is. So if we stop promoting those terms and let's promote love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I'm gonna say the same thing every time, Robert. For the most part, because this is what we're about. You know, it's simple. It's the way of life, and so that's the solution to that. And I just want to say on all these subjects, thank you all for doing this. Thank you guys for promoting and talking about this. This did catch my attention again. I was able to bring my good brother out right here, the sheep right here. So he out as well. We do plan on coming back. We're gonna keep promoting this to our members. We're gonna bring more people out because we certainly need the unity and we can't talk about it, so I'm not here to talk much, but I'll talk when you ask me to, Robert.
Okay.
All right, peace.
And sir, you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, aren't you?
Yes, go Steelers.
You know what I like about all of you people? Absolutely nothing. Okay, let's go right back up. Start from the bottom. Debt and its deficit cousin. We're continuing to relieve American workers of their hard-earned wages in order to provide welfare streams for those who choose not to work. We're also providing welfare like in the city of Virginia Beach and city of Norfolk and some of the other surrounding cities. They're talking about tearing down MacArthur Mall, a $300 million project. 100 million of it was financed by the taxpayers of Norfolk, and to have collateral to go through the bond market, they had to put up the Scope and Chrysler Hall as the collateral for it. So now that $300 million, if they tear it down, it's gone. And in Virginia Beach, I know Councilman Moss, I'm going to ask him to come up real quick, because this thing that's going on at the ocean front is with the dome site and some other things that's going on. You really don't know the inside track of it. And so we're going to ask Councilman Moss to share this with not only us, but all the thousands of people that are watching this on YouTube. Councilman Moss, please.
As Gomer Pyle would say, surprise, surprise.
Whoa, good job.
But I want to talk about just the dome site, and I'll take a question on it. But I want to talk about the larger issue. Is I'm a capitalist. America was founded on capitalism, and a subsidy, whether it's for a business or whether it's a home mortgage deduction or whatever, everything that's a subsidy, someone is paying for that.
Yes, indeed.
You pay for it by one of two ways. Either you debase the currency, which is the current model, which means you give the Federal Reserve an IOU, and they put a lot of digital in your bank account, in the nation's bank account, and you give people what you think is free money. And how many people know that in the last 12 months, 20% of all the money in circulation was printed or created in the last 12 months? You can't continually increase the money supply without devaluing the currency, without devaluing your purchasing power. So whether it's a subsidy for the dome site, or it's a subsidy for whatever it is, solar cars or whatever, all these subsidies cause for the inefficient allocation of capital and keep us from being prosperous. Because in the end, someone is paying. Someone is paying for that. And you're getting something that in the marketplace can't compete. We talked about parental choice. That's giving the customer their money. It's the same thing. It's your money. And someone's giving it for something that you didn't use, and so therefore your taxes have to be higher, or the deficit has to go up because they've given something away. Now, if they went out and said, I'm going to raise the taxes on the country $1.9 trillion, how many people do you think could still stay up there? No, because you'd be getting this $14,000 bill per household, and you'd be going crazy. But if they create it, your purchasing power over the long run and the debt service on that is tremendous. So when this gets back to, you can't tax your way into prosperity, and you can't borrow your way into prosperity. Borrowing is necessary, but who in here would want to borrow for consumption? Yeah. You buy a capital good, a car, to get you to work, that generates income. You buy a home, that gives you something that you paid off, something you can live in after you've retired and you don't have that mortgage payment. But you've got a capital good. But do you borrow to go out and eat at a restaurant? No. So, and you borrow for the essential things. If you can't control, if you're not addressing your flooding problem, why are you borrowing and using available capital to build parking garages for wave pools? Because who says, let me build a pool in my backyard when your roof's leaking? I mean, no one would do that. So I think this all gets back to the part of good, I guess you could say, common sense stuff that we all have to do, because we can't give an IOU to our bank and say, just, I'll pay you in the future sometime. But no, this erodes prosperity, and when you erode prosperity, you erode people's ability to exercise their God-given liberties, because all they have to, they're working more than they need to because they're paying more taxes than they should, and the currency that they're spending is being devalued. There's no free lunch. So I'm not against dome site. I'm not against anything that pays its way. No one gives me and says, let me pay for your driveway in front of your house and let you keep your property taxes so that when you repair it, you can pay it back with your property tax. Who got that? Anybody get that treatment? I haven't heard of anybody getting that. So this gets back to always remembering, if somebody's getting something, who's paying for it? And everybody should really pay their way. Now, there are obviously people in our country who really are disadvantaged. That's true. And it's just our very nature to help people to help themselves. So I don't think we need to do those things. But we do a lot of things that have nothing to do with that. It's people using their political advantage to secure an economic benefit that you pay for that they can't earn in the competitive marketplace. And if they can't compete in the competitive marketplace, it's something we don't need. And I'll give you one example where it makes sense. If someone said, I don't know people about Global Technology Systems over on Bird Neck Road. That's a big company. It's going to ultimately build out 1,100 employees making about $74,000 as their average compensation. That's a big job in this country today for a single worker to make that kind of money. That cost us $8 million in tax incentives. We're spending $92 million in infrastructure for a dome site, and I can assure you that all the jobs down there are not making $74,000 a year. So ask yourself, and I see someone's here, so let me get off the stage.
Wait, before you do, John, I get one other question.
Okay, but that is something that I think, just to put in perspective, what this means, it just means that we as voters have to be a lot smarter when we vote on election day and realize there truly is no free lunch, and we just have to make tough choices and balance our budget and do like we do at home.
John, could you stay up there with, I've asked Laura Hughes from the school board to tag team with you for just a moment, please.
Is this the budget?
Wrestling?
Yes.
All right,
We'll talk about it.
Robert just puts us on the budget. The city manager hasn't actually made it public, the city's budget yet. He has briefed each of us privately, but in all deference to him, I don't want to get out ahead of specifics till he publicly displays it. I think I owe him that courtesy to get a chance to tell that. But let me just put it this way. If we are able to give substantial raises to our city employees and school board employees, but I'm not saying they do or don't deserve, and that's an issue to discuss once it's public on the amount, that then we also deserve to give our citizens a pay raise too, by the same percentage, and that means reducing the real estate tax rate that currently is $1.0175 should be reduced by the same percentage as the raise for our employees, so that everybody in Virginia Beach enjoys a pay raise.
Yeah, let's hear it. Yay.
And that is what I'm going to push. Rather than saying what we can take away from people that don't yet have it, but everyone at the table is a stakeholder in our community, and everyone should get a pay raise when we adopt the budget, and that's what I'm going to work to accomplish. If that's not the case, I probably will not be voting for the budget, and I think they're going to have a very difficult time asking people to pay higher taxes for a bond referendum for flood mitigation if the council, when they had the opportunity, failed to exercise the discipline to reduce the current tax rate that we now impose, so that we in fact pay for some of that flooding with kind of, so to speak, retained earnings. So that's my general position on the budget, but I will really wait till the city manager comes out and makes his recommendation and then comment afterwards. But I'm going to try to get you the same raise and a reduced real estate tax rate that others think that we can use your money to pay, so everybody gets a raise. That's my view.
So meanwhile, while we await City Council's vote on the budget, I voted no to the school board budget because we were asking for a 5% raise across the board, and that goes from the superintendent down. It was across the board. We have 46 people in central administration with six-figure salaries and their staffs. And do I think teachers always get paid what they should get paid? No, I don't. But what I do think is that we have people in the private sector who have lost their jobs or they're working reduced hours. In addition, their child care expenses have gone up. Their grocery bills have gone up because their kids are eating at home. They are making choices between child care and being able to go to work. And it is just not the time to give a raise to the entire school system. Government employees never lost a paycheck. And I think that we should not be, much like Councilman Moss was saying, everybody should get a raise at the same time. And it was just not the time to vote a raise. And by the way, teachers did lose the raise we voted in last year, but they've gotten a raise every year for at least the last 5 years before that. So they are getting regular raises.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. We'll come back and revisit all of these. And again, these organizations that y'all are associated with, please look at this last list, and you all received a copy of it, and take on those items that we need to push. It's a very scary thing out there, especially with HR 1 coming up. If you don't have the information on that, please see Kathleen McCarthy. She'll give you everything on that. This is a terrifying bill that the Democrats or Dumbocrats have come up with. I mean, it's really bad. And we do have Virginia Wassenberg from the Stop the Flooding Now. And I've told Councilman Moss this, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And if you don't prioritize, as he said, I can tell you from my point of view, I'm going to be out there effectively stopping this referendum for flooding if they're going to give everybody else all these Christmas gifts. It's a real problem. And as far as the teachers, I'm sorry, but coming out of corporate America, not everybody in that school system is worth 5%. And that's the way our system is structured. Everybody gets the same. The type A behavior, HCA person, and the worst of the worst teacher in the system. Everybody gets the same thing. So something's wrong with it. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, David Bartholomew. These are tenuous times when the Bruins are playing my Pittsburgh Penguins, and he is the Boston Bean Baron. So, and they are just behind us in the standings. So, ladies and gentlemen, David Bartholomew.
Thank you, Robert. He's right. We're just 1 point in the standings behind the Penguins, so we'll catch them. It's my honor to introduce Kirk Cox to you. I've known Kirk Cox for a lot of years. I knew him when he was the majority whip, moved up to majority leader, and then when Speaker Howell retired, Kirk became the Speaker of the House of Delegates. He's a solid 1A, 2A, and 1,000% pro-life. He's on the conservative side of the issues, and it's my honor to introduce the next governor of the state of Virginia, Kirk Cox.
Well, David, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here. What I thought I'd do is I'll talk for 4 or 5 minutes. I'd much rather take your questions. And so let me tell you about Kirk Cox a little bit. I'm a 30-year U.S. and Virginia government teacher. And what I loved about that is what an honor to be able to teach about the best system of government known to man. Amen. We are Amen. Where it all started. And so that was quite an honor for me. And I will assure you, I taught not only the Declaration, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, but when my kids left their senior year, they knew those founding documents front and back. So that was a great privilege of mine. I ran and won for the House of Delegates way back in 1990, and so I've been around for 32 years. Here's what's the beautiful thing about that, and that is we're a citizen legislature. That's how the founders designed it. We're in for 60 days in the even year, and we're in for 46 days in the odd year. And then we go home, and we have to live with the laws that we pass. And so as a K-12 teacher, if I passed a law when I got back to school, I had to live with that law. And we had doctors, and we had businessmen, we had cattle farmers, we even had a tree surgeon at one time. And so one of the things that I really fear is the Democrats eventually try to make that a full-time legislature, and then you become Washington. And that is not the founder's design. I'm also proud that when I first got there, we made $18,000. Today we make $17,640. So we took a 2% pay cut. And once again, that's not Washington. So I was very blessed to work my way up to majority leader and then speaker. When I was speaker, we were able to cut taxes, second largest tax cut in Virginia history, over $1 billion. And we simply just gave it directly back to the people. And by the way, I really enjoyed the discussion of the budget today. And we're in the same, you might not realize this, in Virginia right now, we ran a $720 million surplus. Think about that. So how could that have happened? So much of the federal money is because of that. And I have advocated simply to give it back. It's the simplest way to do it. We did that 2 years ago. And so we simply need to, and that's just the fundamental trust of the taxpayers. You got to make a decision whether or not they can make better decisions for themselves and whether government always does that. So that is something that I've worked very hard on. I know a lot of you are very, very big, don't worry, very, very big Second Amendment folks. And when I was majority leader and when I was speaker, I fought very, very hard for that issue. The majority leader is the chief debater on the floor. So when Mark Herring tried to take away reciprocity as far as concealed carry with all the other states or repealing one gun a month, I was the chief spokesperson on those various bills. And the life issue is also a very, very important issue to me. When Kathy Tron, the Democrat, put a bill in that would make abortion up until birth, third trimester abortion is legal, I actually did something a little bit unusual. I was the speaker, and the speaker stands up on this high platform. A lot of people don't realize this. The speaker has a seat on the floor of the House of Delegates, which is never used. As a matter of fact, in my 32 years, I've never seen a speaker give a speech. And I gave a speech on that bill because I felt so strongly that is not where Virginia wants to go. So let me tell you a little bit of the other things that Marlon and Forrest Dance, and they're the pillars of the community. They're just great folks. And they recently got some ammunition in. Now, any of you that like the Second Amendment know that ammunition is almost impossible to come by right now. And so they advertised the following advertisement. Really simple, need ammo, got ammo. That was the whole advertisement. Now, I don't consider that immensely controversial. Do you know that Facebook post got taken down? Okay. And here's what's interesting about that. Yeah, why is a great question. That's not even against their own community standards. And so that's sort of where we're at right now. And I can tell you as a 12th grade government teacher, I got so tired of my students coming back and saying when they were in college, Mr. Cox, I can't even write on a conservative topic. I can't even pick one. Because I know if I write on a conservative topic that I'll get graded down. And if I speak up, that I'll be shamed. And let me tell you, that is the worst thing you can have happen if you're ever going to have vigorous debate in a representative democracy. And so I propose the following as far as this whole big tech thing goes. That basically they've got to be very clear and publish exactly what their community standards are. If they're going to remove someone, they have to notify them, and that if they are going to permanently remove them, it's 3 strikes and you're right. They have to have 3 chances. And if they violate the law, it's a $100,000 fine. And so it's not just like I've not spoken up on issues like the big tech issue. And so a lot of those types of issues Kirk Cox has worked very, very, very hard on. So why should you elect Kirk Cox? What's different about him? And I would say this. I come from the bluest Republican district in the state. So it's only 46% Republican. It is 30% minority. I had $1.5 million put against me in a House of Delegates race when I was speaker, because I was the #1 target. And I won that seat by 4 points. And so when you talk about can someone actually attract crossover votes, keep conservatives, I did that. I knocked on over 8,000 doors, and I went back and I met people in every part of my district, and I was able to win. And so I do think I'm that electable candidate. Got some great lineup of endorsements, George Allen, Bob McDonald, and all across the state. I think I have probably about twice as many as anyone else. And by the way, endorsements don't get you elected. But I do think endorsements say something to your character and who supports you. So with that, I will be quiet and much rather take your questions on what you're interested in. So fire away. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, someone had a question for you on SB 966 on electric utilities regulation that was put up.
Kurt, excuse me, could you repeat the question for the live streaming? We can't hear it back there.
Yeah, could you give me the bill number again? We do about 1,000 bills a year or so there.
SB 966.
Okay, on Virginia.
Produced by Frank Warner, yeah.
Wagner.
Frank Wagner. Okay. Well, the only difficulty that there probably were 10 to 20 Dominion bills that were up, and so I don't remember them all by number. But generally, here's what I try to do: when I assess a bill that deals with whether it be Dominion or APCO or your co-ops, I mean, generally what I do try to do is just make sure that the ratepayer is considered. I really do try to do that. And so I apologize. I mean, I'd have to actually look at the bill, but we've had a whole.
Obviously, you don't remember it. So, do you feel that Dominion Energy has a monopoly here in Virginia?
Well, of course, I mean they do. They're a regulated monopoly. I mean, it's not whether I feel like where they have a monopoly. They are a monopoly. They're a regulated monopoly. Remember, they are overseen by the State Corporation Commission, and so anytime Dominion wants rate increases, they have to go to the State Corporation Commission to get those. There's some really complex issues dealing with them. So for example, sometimes those issues are, do you grant them variances for stranded costs? Do you grant them variances for undergrounding, et cetera? And all I'm saying, I mean, we've had electric school bus issues, we've had those different type of issues. But my general feeling on the whole energy issue is the following, and that is you'll see Kirk Cox on the energy issues, all of the above. I mean, I'm for coal, I'm for natural gas, I am for alternatives, but they're simply not going to get you there. Solar and wind probably do about 8% of what our electric grid right now is. And so I think you'll see that when the Democrats pass this latest energy bill, it will cost you about $800 per year. Those are the key bills. Okay, and I voted and spoke vehemently against that bill. As a matter of fact, that is a very aggressive timetable to do away with fossil fuels. And this was a Dominion issue, when we had a bill up this year that called for electric school buses, which are probably 3 times the cost of diesel. And that was something Dominion did support. I did not support. And so, yeah, candidly, I can't reel off every bill number. I know. And we some years we have 3,000 bills introduced. So, I mean, generally someone can describe the bill. I have a pretty good memory on the bills, but it is hard to remember all the bill numbers. But I would say generally what I've tried to do through my career is sort of look at the bill and see whether or not the ratepayer is affected, and I've tried to be on the side of the ratepayer.
You voted for Medicaid expansion.
Louder.
Yeah, she said you voted for Medicaid expansion. So I'll start my question with this. My answer, and I'm more than happy to answer that question. Also, I always sort of laugh, though, as Speaker, if I get credit for Medicaid expansion, you have to give me credit for the $1 billion tax cut, freezing college tuition for the first time in 20 years. I was the Speaker that made sure that we had about $1.6 billion in reserve. I was the Speaker that killed the Kathy Tron bill. I was the Speaker when the governor politicized the Virginia Beach shooting, which I thought was very tragic, and tried to hold a special session during an election year on guns. I shut that special session down in 90 minutes. Sure, I was the majority leader 4 years who argued against pure Medicaid expansion. Remember, we were at 67 votes in the House of Delegates, and then we lost 15 seats, so we were down to 51-49, all right? And the Medicaid expansion bill was a straight Medicaid expansion bill, which means it had no governor on it whatsoever, and also was embedded in the budget. And a lot of you that have done budgets on city council and school board, Virginia has never not having a budget. We have always had our budget by July 1st. We have a July 1st fiscal year, and this is really important for the integrity of the system. And so when I met with my caucus, we have a lot of folks from Southwest, Southside that have a lot of working poor. And they basically said, we have to vote for some kind of Medicaid expansion. So I knew walking in, I was at least 12 votes short. So you have tough decisions as Speaker. So here was my decision. Medicaid expansion was passing. It was passing. And I had the very tough decision, do I try to modify it, or do I simply let it pass? Kirk Cox votes no, I can feel good about myself, and we get straight Medicaid expansion. So here's what I did. I said, I want the following, sort of the Mike Pence model in Indiana. I want a work requirement, I want a training requirement, sort of what George Allen did with welfare, if you remember, way back in 1996, because I could handle the bill if people had to work. But here's the big one. Medicaid expansion is a 90-10 federal-state split. So regular Medicaid is 50-50. So the state puts up 50 and the federal government puts up 50. Medicaid expansion is 90% federal, 10% state. And the big fear of Medicaid expansion, and it is a very legitimate fear, is the federal government will renege on that commitment, because the federal government reneges on a lot of things. And so you might not know this. I actually put a kill switch into the bill, and what that means is the moment the Medicaid expansion, the 90% federal contribution goes down 1 point to 89% Medicaid expansion goes away automatically. We do not have to come back and re-vote on it. It automatically goes away. And so that was basically what we ended up with. And I just felt like at the time it was a tough decision, it's a decision I had to make.
Do you really think that we'll be able to say no more Medicaid, if they go down 1 point?
It's not a matter of saying it. You don't even have to come back into session. It's an automatic kill switch. I'm just saying I negotiated. I mean, it's the way, because you're right. What I didn't want to have to happen was that the legislature comes back in and debates it, okay? Because you're right, on that circumstance, it'd be very hard to pass. That's not how the kill switch works. The kill switch works, it is an automatic kill switch, okay?
But it does raise our taxes. What's that question? I mean, any kind of Medicaid, doesn't it? I'll look at it this way. You all...
The 10% state share, okay, is basically paid through a very complicated formula by hospitals. It's sort of like the hospitals agree they want a Medicaid expansion, so there's sort of a federal flow-through way it works, and so that is how it's taxed. But once again, I'm not going to be, I will answer whatever question, and when you have a 32 record, you have to. But let me say this. I think it's a false premise that you would have had Medicaid expansion. The votes were not there. It wasn't a matter, if it was a matter of, when I was a majority leader, I had the votes to kill it, and we did 4 years. But you're either going to get work requirements and kill switches, or you're going to get straight Medicaid expansion. You got to make those decisions. It's really easy if you've never, candidly, if you're a candidate, you go, oh, I wouldn't have been for that. Well, if you weren't there and you don't have to make those tough decisions, that's an easy thing to say. But I will tell you this, I think you'd be pretty proud of my 32-year record. If you look at Kirk Cox over 32 years, I think I've been one of the best core conservatives in the General Assembly. And I think most people will tell you that. Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk about the restrictions that the current governor has put on us and all of his executive power that he's putting over us. You want to talk about that and kind of where you stand on
Sure,
that?
I'd love to do that. You'll find this a little bit unusual. I put a bill in this year that would have said that a governor's executive orders can only be for 45 days, and then the legislature must come in and approve them. And you can go, well, you're running for governor. That sounds like a fairly strange stance to take. It's not. If you truly believe in separation of powers and checks and balances, and frankly, the legislative branch being the people's house, governors have no business having unlimited authority. And I don't want to be that kind of governor. I don't want to be the kind of governor that rules by executive order. That's not. It's bigger than you are. When you're running for governor, the whole thing's bigger than you. And so I fought very hard for that bill. There was a version that was 30 days. I could certainly go for that too. I just decided I thought 45, maybe I could get it passed. The Democrats had this is interesting, they had no interest in that. They have no interest in checking their governor. So you will see I've been very aggressive in that space. Here's what I find interesting about your question. I saw a great study by a group called Wallet Hub that does studies state by state. Do you know we were rated 2 weeks ago the least safe state in the nation? So they took together our testing rates, our vaccine rates, our hospitalizations, etc. So think about what we've been through as far as suspension of liberties, etc., through these executive orders. You would at least think that something good came of that as far as your ranking. So how does that happen and you're last? And so the tragedy for Virginia is that we've been through all that overreach by the governor, and it's gotten us nothing. It's killed all businesses. Our schools should be open. I've advocated very, very heavily for that. And can I say I'm uniquely qualified to do that? I think it does help, having been in K-12 my entire life. I'm the first person to say, if I was a teacher, I want to be back in school right now. Can you imagine being a senior in high school and missing your entire senior year. And I had 4 boys, and that meant everything to them, not only academically, but sports and all the things that help you. I can tell you as a teacher, I'd have a classroom like this. I could pretty quickly pick up which kids were struggling psychologically, et cetera, and I can immediately deal with that. I don't know how you do that on Zoom. I have no idea how you handle and help kids in that situation. So whether it be that, I thought the governor totally mishandled the vaccination piece. I could just go on and on and on and on. And so I think he's been very, very poor. You will see a totally different Kirk Cox, I think, when it comes to a lot of those types of things. Yes, ma'am.
I think everybody knows that we're overtaxed, that our businesses are closing, all that's going on, and people are at a point where, like, say, for instance, it's business, and we're just gonna stay open and commit sort of a civil disobedience. They've got the health department coming on. It's just way too much government oppression, and everybody's feeling it. You can feel it in the grocery store, you can feel it everywhere you go. So will you lift, if you're elected, will you open our state completely?
Yeah, I don't think there'd be any question. Yeah, I don't think there'd be any question you would see Kirk Cox be pretty aggressive in opening the state. I think states that have done that have proven that it works. And can I go back to my stat again? You can't even make a good argument that what we've done has worked. And so not only have you, from a philosophical, to your point, just good government standpoint, what I think is really condemning is what we've done has been immensely unsuccessful, which people aren't talking about. So yeah, and let me say this: governors in Virginia, do have some powers which are important. We pick the parole board, we pick every college and university board, and a lot of those various the people that you put in place are absolutely key. The Virginia Department of Health has been a disaster, and we know that. But once again, the leadership of VDH has been a disaster. And remember, governors, once again, appoint all those positions. And I would say the advantage of Kirk Cox, again, is, and I think it's an advantage sometimes to have been around. I know some really good people that would run those agencies really well. And they know how the bureaucracy works. And they know basically how to limit government. You bring someone in there that doesn't know that, and they won't be successful. Yes, sir. I'll try to get to everybody.
As you know, our medical doctor governor wants to keep babies comfortable for a few minutes after they're born before they're killed.
What does that mean?
Where do you stand on abortion?
What does that mean?
Yeah, I think you'll see once again, and let me be a little bit more specific, as I usually am. I have been twice the Family Foundation Legislator of the Year, and the Family Foundation has probably been the lead advocacy group on pro-life. And I've gotten that award twice because of my stance on that. So I've been making speeches on Roe v. Wade for the last 25 years when it wasn't unpopular. And when I made that particular speech on, and of course what the governor said was one of the most horrific things I think any governor has ever said. But I referenced very quickly that Kathy Tron bill. And what that bill basically said was that you could have one doctor approve a third trimester abortion. So the way that bill works is you can go to Planned Parenthood and get that doctor basically to approve the abortion. That's the only restriction there is. And if you look back to New York, when New York's Senate flipped from Republican to Democrat, they passed that bill. And the Democrats celebrated that bill. And so one of the things that I did was that I made sure when I was speaker and that bill came up, remember, and we talked about Medicaid expansion, we were at 51-49. So if I lose one vote on that bill, that becomes law. So I felt so strongly on that bill. What I was saying was I actually gave a speech, had Todd Gilbert, the majority leader, come up and preside. And I said the following. So like I have a microphone in my hand. I said, as long as I have a microphone in my hand, I will stand up for the unborn. And I used this statistic. Think about this statistic for a second. 61,017,977. Let me say that again. 61,077,977. That is how many abortions we have had since Roe v. Wade. And I made the following comment. So now we're thinking about third trimesters, unfettered abortions. And you talk about being on the wrong side of history. that puts Virginia on the wrong side of history. And one of my favorite biblical characters is King David, who's a man after God's own heart. In Psalm 139, he says the following. He says, "You created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made." And I quoted King David on the floor of the House. And we were able to kill that bill. So you'll find no one, I think, has more of a heart on the life issue than I do. Yes, sir, I think you were next in the back.
There's a growing number of states that are moving towards nullification. How do you stand on that issue?
Yeah, I haven't studied nullification to tell you how many states are, really moving towards that. I don't know. I mean, I've got candidly sort of mixed emotions on nullification. My guess is, and of course, nullification goes way back to the 1800s. I think there are probably enough, to be candid with you, there's probably enough in place when we get there that we can probably overturn most of what's going on. I mean, I'm an Article 5 convention guy, so I mean, certainly, believe in that, and I think that's probably a good alternative to maybe, rewrite some of the things that are necessary.
So the election's in November. It's quite a long way away. So when you talk about reopening, is that more of a hypothetical, if I was governor right now, or do you think this will be an actual issue by the time you're inaugurated?
So the question was on opening schools that, obviously, if I'm governor, you're correct. It's a great point. You're not governor until next January. And so you would hope, my gosh, the schools would be reopened by then. Let me tell you what I've done and how I've tried to push that. Back in July, and of course I'm in the House of Delegates, we were facing a special session that the Democrats were going to call. And I said back in July, the schools need to be open. And I was very specific, not just saying, hey, open schools. I was talking about specifically how you do that as far as liability coverage for school systems, as far as school nurses, having a much more effective health department to partner as far as testing goes. But I got together with several other state delegates and senators with a very comprehensive plan. And here's what else I proposed. I said it needs to be 5 days. It needs to be 5 days in-person learning. That's important because the problem with a hybrid system is that a lot of times what happens is you have kids, especially elementary school, that will go to daycare, then come back to school, and really from a health perspective, you're not really accomplishing anything. If you look at the private schools, they've been pretty successful. And my home school system of Colonial Heights has been open since Labor Day. And they've done some very smart things to mitigate some of the health risks. But I called for that back in July. I'm also a little bit unusual. I'm a school choice guy as a public school teacher. And people think that's a bit of an unusual thing, but I see it as a win-win. We need choice in the system. And one of the things I proposed was something called the READ Fund. And the READ Fund would simply say, for parents who are having to go virtual, they could basically get help with things like tutoring, with teaching pods, with hardware, software, etc. So now fast forward to January 5th. I was calling for teachers to be vaccinated well before the governor and to make sure that was expedited. And I've come up with a 10-point plan on learning loss, no matter what zip code you're in as a kid, to quickly make up for that learning loss. You get kids right now that are 3 and 6 months behind. And so that's going to take intense tutoring. And I was a basketball and baseball coach, and I tell you one thing, the way I always kept my kids, who frankly were much more interested in playing basketball, some of them, than academically staying. But here's what was always interesting. They loved playing basketball, and I knew this. Their grades always went up when I coached them. And everyone was shocked by that. I go, it's simple. They want to play very badly, and I made them come after school for after-school study hall with me and get tutored. And they always went up. And so we're going to need some pretty aggressive protocols. But here's a good difference in the Republicans and Democrats. The Democrats were just shut down totally on that issue. And then they started to take a lot of flack, especially in Northern Virginia. And you ask a lot of times, so how do we win Northern Virginia? Parents are furious in Northern Virginia. And every school board is a Democratic school board. They are furious about not opening their schools. And we had a bill basically by a Republican to open our schools. And the Democrats finally went along with it, a watered down version. The bill's going into effect July 1st. And we said, no, let's make the bill effective immediately, which you can do with an emergency clause, and they wouldn't vote for that. So I think we sort of saw how transparent they were. So you'll see Kirk Cox fight for that now, and you'll see Kirk Cox fight for that in the future.
We've seen a lot in the headlines about what's going on with the current investigation into the parole board, and I know that you were one of the first people to speak up and notice it and speak up against it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that current investigation, what actually took place?
So the question was on the parole board. And as you know, governors do have some appointments. So the governor, as I talked about, appoints the parole board. Yeah, I think it's one of the worst issues we've had, and I think it's one the Democrats rightly are going to pay a price on. So quick context. Remember, the Democrats have really pushed to fund the police, really pushed some really tough bills on law enforcement. For example, one would be qualified immunity, where you can sue a police officer for anything. So here you are, a sheriff's deputy, starting at $33,000 a year, and you can be sued for anything. You're just going to lose a lot of people on the force. And so it's interesting, they have also done a whole lot of things to try to end parole, try to do truth in sentencing, but the parole board is probably the worst. And what happened there was that we had a parole board, and remember, it's a McAuliffe Northern Parole Board, and they basically have let out 8 to 10 pretty violent criminals. The worst one was Vincent Martin. Vincent Martin, back in the early 1980s, used a sawed-off shotgun to shoot someone in the commission of a robbery. So he goes to jail for about 5 years. He gets out very soon after that, robs a 7-Eleven early in the morning, is driving the wrong way on a one-way street. And Michael O'Connor, a 23-year-old police officer, stops him. Didn't know anything about the crime. Vincent Martin gets out of the store, gets out of the car, shoots him, and then stands over top of him and executioner style shoots him 4 times in the head. So that's who they let out. We're not talking about some administrative glitch. We're talking about letting someone out like Vincent Martin. And we now find out from the Office of the Inspector General that the parole board basically, the head of the parole board advocated openly to get Vincent Martin out. That's not her job. And also, besides that, didn't even notify the witnesses of, especially that were victims' family and the Commonwealth's attorney. That's against the law. And also, basically falsified the minutes. And so we're finding out some really bad things about the parole board. So, hey, sometimes it's a simple proposal. Obviously, you just got to fire every one of them at this point. And I've called on Terry McAuliffe to do that if he runs for governor. So, yes, ma'am.
What can you do about strengthening the department, basically, to take care of waste, fraud, and abuse? Because there are several things in several different departments that I've reported to them, the facts and everything else, and nothing ever gets done. The BDH is one of the biggest ones that we have. I ended up basically Richmond telling me we're not going to answer or deal with you anymore. It's that bad. So what can we actually get strengthened to start getting these different agencies to go, start actually following the law, doing stuff that's more moral and by the people?
There are 4 or 5 answers to that. There are 4 or 5 directions you can take, which I all think would be effective. Number one, I would say cutting regulations is really important, because if you cut the regulatory authority of a lot of the agencies, they don't have that power anyway. And so one of the things I worked really hard on as speaker, we actually cut regulations to the Department of Professional Occupation Regulation. They basically do all your first-time businesses, cosmetologists, barbers, etc. We have way too many onerous regulations. So I'd say that's number one. Number two, other states have done this very successfully. Let's take Medicaid fraud, for example. They have brought in companies, who specialize in streamlining Medicaid fraud. Because a lot of times if the government do it, you're basically asking people to find fraud whose job depends on that agency. And so I can name one company that was used very effectively in several states that dramatically reduced their Medicaid fraud. And so that would be one of the things that I would look at, having gone to a lot of these conferences and knowing those. The third thing is we have something called JLARC, the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission. They're an independent agency, and so you can have them look at any agency, and basically you write a resolution, and the resolution says what you want looked at. And the beauty of them is then they come back and say, hey, there is X, Y, and Z. So for example, the State Board of Elections, remember your favorite group? Okay. JLARC, you might not realize this, 3 years ago said it's the most political agency in state government. And it basically said that the top 3 positions are all political positions, and no other agencies like that. They should be, basically nonpartisan folks. And so getting JLARC, frankly, on some of those, and finally, I know this is a long answer, finally, you can write language into the budget. You can write study language into the budget. Well, you can write about any kind of investigatory study that you want to write in. And you can put, the key is the language you put in the study. Because if you don't put tough language in there that looks at the particular things you want looked at, then they'll sort of go over the top. And so governors can also have blue ribbon task force, but those are some of the things I would do.
Yes, last one, Kurt.
One thing I just wanted to say after this, didn't the chief of the parole board who let Martin out, wasn't she put on the bench by the Democrats? Isn't she now a judge?
Yeah, you're exactly right. The McAuliffe parole board chair was put on the bench, and every Republican voted against her.
Could you talk about our right to work and what
Sure,
they say to them?
sure. So the question was on right to work. Right to work is basically where you're not forced to join a union. You have several issues along with the right to work project, labor agreements, etc. They did not repeal right to work, but let me give y'all a really big caution. When I first got in, no one would even dare think about putting that bill in. 80% of businesses will tell you this. They won't even look at your state. They won't even look at your state if you're not a right to work state. And I've talked to so many businesses said if you repeal the right to work law, we're leaving. And they're already leaving because they suspect that might happen. That's your problem. So here's what happened this year, interestingly enough. Lee Carter put the bill in to repeal the right to work law. Lee is running for governor on the Democratic side. And when you say he's a socialist, he'll tell you who's a socialist. I give him credit. He doesn't hide it. He'll tell you he's a socialist. And so the Democrats, because it's an election year, did not pass that bill out. They really didn't even hear the bill. So here's what he did, which was fascinating. He asked for the committee to be discharged. And I hate to get in the weeds, but that basically means let's bypass the committee and kick the bill straight to the floor. Well, the Democrats panicked, okay, because they didn't want to be voting on right to work. And they were furious, fellow Democrat. And here's what Lee Carter said, which I give Lee Carter credit. He goes, look, I'm for it, okay? You need to stop hiding behind the committee system, and you need to vote on the bill. So we went into recess for about 2 hours while the Democrats scrambled around trying to figure out what the heck to do. And they defeated the discharge motion, but you know what they defeated it on? Not the substance of right to work, because several of them voted for it. It was, we've never discharged the committee before, so we shouldn't start now. So they hit under a procedural move. And I will tell you this, that's coming. Remember, 1/4 of the Democrats right now are being challenged on the left in primaries. And these are far left Democrats. And let me tell you what they're being challenged on, things like right to work, etc. So when they come back next time, they're repealing stuff like that. And so that's not just me being, pie in the sky. You're going to see that kind of thing. So, well, thank y'all very much. Very thoughtful questions. I appreciate it. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Last question.
He said one more. I was trying to be good.
Thank you. I am curious about voter fraud. They said that Virginia was involved in that. So I'm curious how you can win or any other Republican win or turn our state red again if there is legitimate election fraud. And number two, what about vaccine, mandatory vaccine?
Yeah, well, I'm not for mandatory vaccine.
Well, I understand that, but is there anything going on in conversation?
There was a bill in basically where that would not have required mandatory vaccines by a Republican who got killed. So that's the end of the story, unfortunately, on that. So let's go to voter fraud. Where we are on voter fraud, here's the biggest thing on voter fraud. I'm going to be real frank with you. Here's our trouble. They've done away with, as you know, voter ID, signature requirements on absentee ballots. They have instituted drop boxes, etc. Okay. The problem with all of those laws is you take them in sort of their whole, and it makes it very, very hard to prove voter fraud. So your dilemma is that when you try to take those cases to court, it makes it much tougher. And obviously, I'm much against all of those laws, and will fight very much to restore them. We put bills on in every one of those categories. We put bills in to restore voter ID. We put bills in basically on signature requirements. We put bills in on all of that. And none of them pass. The Democrats aren't passing them as long as they're in control right now. So the bottom line is you're not going to alter the laws right now. And I'd like to say you would. Okay? The best thing the Republican can do, and I've pledged to do this, is use the, and let's face it, you're the statewide top of the ticket. So people very much identify with the governor. And you can raise a decent amount of money. And so a governor's campaign has to really help with voter integrity, especially getting very, very qualified people in every precinct. And I'm not talking about the precincts you like to go into. I'm talking about the precincts that are very, very difficult to go into. So you're going to have to run a very aggressive voter integrity project. And that's probably, and you're going to have to call out the State Board of Elections on everything they do from September on. But here's the good news. If you do elect a Republican governor, remember this. You immediately flip the State Board of Elections. It goes from 3 Democrats to 2 Republicans to the vote. I think you can get a Republican in the office, and I'm not saying there's not voter fraud, but we are where we are. We've got to unite, okay, and we've got to try to win because right now you're not going to flip the laws. And I'll go back to my district again. I'll go back to my district. I won absentee ballots 3-1. I won absentee ballots, and the Democrats, I was their top target. I won them by 3-1. So there are some really good voter strategies you can use to mitigate some of that. But there's no great answer on fixing the laws right now because we just don't have the ability to do that. So I don't want to mislead you and say Kirk Cox is going to fix the laws right now. You can't do that.
Thank you. Let's hear it for him. Kirk Cox. I just want to mention a couple of things real quick. 50-50, if you have not bought your 50-50 tickets, there's Mark right there in the plaid shirt with the beard. $1 a piece or 6 for $5. Please contact your local council members on the budget. No tax increase, cut the real estate tax, and we've got to get on that one. That pertains to all the cities around here. And as a courtesy, Amanda Chase will be here this afternoon for a meet and greet at 5:30. So Laura asked me if I would mention that. So Amanda Chase and announcements. We're going to forego it's your 2 cents because of the length of the program today. But I will mention that Diana Howard, we had Bannon here, from the State Board of Elections. So we were pretty tough on him. So Diana, do you have a announcement?
I just wanted to make an announcement. April 1st, we will have the Director of Management and Budget for the City of Virginia Beach, Kevin Chatelier. And if I pronounce his name wrong, I apologize. He will be our guest speaker.
Okay.
April 1st, right here, 7 p.m.
And before we, any other night, Tom Mealy.
Yeah, 9/12 meets this coming Monday night at Why Not Italia? How Congress works and why it doesn't.
Yes.
Great Neck Road.
Kathleen McCarthy, the time at 6:30. March 25th.
March 25th is Medal of Honor Day, and it honors all of the recipients of the Medal of Honor. There were over 3,000 Medal of Honor recipients since its inception during the Civil War, and there are 67, I think, that are alive today.
And we'll send it out a notice to everybody. If you're not on my mailing list, or rather, if you don't want to be on my mailing list, let me know. I know, hi, Don. Are there any updates on any other candidates' campaigns here?
Well, I was just going to add, I know everybody's in a hurry to get out, but my friend Graham here is with Pete Star. I'm with Glenn Youngkin. Could we both have at least like 30 seconds just to say something?
Yes, sir.
You said Graham. I'm like, I don't know who that is.
Oh, you're talking about...
Yeah.
Hey, come on up here, Graham. This is Graham Cracker.
Oh, don't get hit, but Robert. Thank you all very much. I'm Eric Ray. As you all know, I'm representing Pete Snyder campaign. we need energy, folks. We need some good energy, and what you just basically said, Lorraine, is what we stand on. We need to make sure that our elections are fair, and we just don't need to just lay there and take it. We need to make sure that we can get someone that's going to fight for us, and that's Pete Snyder. I had a conversation, as y'all know, I bury dead people for a living. Y'all know that, right? So I had a conversation with a lady the other day, just last night, and she's an elected official. Hey, back there. He's elected official. She's elected official, and she said, I am not worried about, we're Democrat. She's a strong Democrat. We're not worried about any one of your candidates except that Snyder guy. She didn't know that I'm supporting Pete Snyder. I'm like, why? She said, because he's a wild card. No one knows how he's going to market. And he markets kind of like we do. That's a strong statement. Now, she's strong for Carol Foy, and she said, basically, Terry McAuliffe will be your next governor. He will be your next governor, because we're not going to get Foy, we're not going to get McClellan. They're basically got this rigged for him. So what does that say to you? That says that they're not worried about anybody on our side except that Snyder guy. Folks, we have to make sure that we get someone in there who's going to who's done the work. In 2013, after he didn't win the lieutenant governor's race, he went and worked for E.W. Jackson. And I'll ask you this other question. How many candidates gave to Donald Trump? He gave $50,000 to Donald Trump. Ask anybody. At the end of the day, folks, we want to make sure that this state is going to be the best state that it can possibly be. He's a businessman, and he's going to make sure that businesses are going to flourish. The 30-day fund to help small businesses. This man should not have to worry about a gubernatorial restriction because of some disease that they say on the news that the numbers are going up. We understand that it's real, but I'm an undertaker. It's not as deadly as people say it is. Believe me, I'll be the first to know. But at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you like this. We need to do something different. We need to make sure that we can get this economy moving again. Pete Snyder is a businessman. He's the only person that can do that. We got some great candidates, outstanding candidates. But at the end of the day, we need to win. We need to take back Virginia, and we need to restore the integrity of voters and make sure that individuals who vote, they know their votes are counted. Because I was up 11,000 votes at election night, and then 19,000 votes come at the end of the night. I don't know how that happens. So, folks, people they need to have their faith restored in the election system. Folks, I'm Eric Graham representing Pete Snyder. There will be other events. We had some this week, but there will be other events. Please be a delegate, because at the end of the day, we can't get to November unless we win in May. So we want to make sure, I know, Mark, but we want to make sure that you sign a pre-delegate form, make sure that you become a delegate for Pete, and then Pete will go on in November and defeat Terry McAuliffe. Thank you very much. I'm not Graham, I'm Eric, but come on through that, buddy.
I won't keep y'all long because I got a lot of grass to cut today. So, for those of y'all who don't know me, I'm Priddle. I'm with Glenn Youngkin for governor. And so, the thing, whoever gets the governor's nomination for Republicans, we have got to support them. We cannot lose this state. This may be the very last time to save Virginia. The state that founded for the country is at stake, so we have to save our Commonwealth before it's too late, and we're on edge. Glenn can handle China, as we saw when Trump thanked him for his work with the Carlyle Group in the China trade deal. This is what happens when I try to speak quick. And when we send our Republican nominee to face Terry McAuliffe, we need someone who has dealt with China the right way to face off Terry McAuliffe and how he betrayed us sending jobs off to China years ago. Glenn is for school choice and opening up the schools. The money follows the child. He's all for parent choice. And we've talked a lot about election integrity. Folks, Trump was winning Virginia election night. Daniel Gade was winning. Scott Taylor had a check mark at his name at 2:30 at night. And then look what happens the next morning. So Glenn has already launched an election integrity task force, which includes auditing all voting machines before and after every election, voter ID, praise the Lord, check the roll once a month, and if you've died, left the state, you're a felon, you're off the roll. The election department, we talked about, if we have a Republican governor, the election department is Republican. If we have a Democrat governor, the election department is Democrat. Well, guess what? Glenn wants to make the electoral department totally out of the executive branch, period. And then the last plan is if you want to vote absentee or vote by mail, you have to fill in a request, and the signature has to match the signature on another document. And one last thing I'll add about the schools is his plan for opening up the schools is the same thing Ron DeSantis did. Glenn asked Ron, well, you open up the schools. What if the teacher union said no? Ron DeSantis looks at him and says, well, you know what? I told those teacher unions, if you don't open up, I'm going to do the same thing to y'all Reagan did to that one group in the 80s. So that's how we open up the schools and put these teacher unions back in their place and get our kids back where they belong. So that's what I got for Glenn in this 30-ish seconds. If y'all have any more questions or anything, come see me. And I also got delegate forms. God bless y'all and God bless America.
Can you talk a little bit about delegate harvesting?
Exactly. What about it?
I'm hearing that people are going around recruiting for Republicans, but they're not.
Are you talking about the thing? Someone sent me this long thing. I was busy. I'm a good employee, but I also have a life outside the job, so I don't catch everything. The only thing I can think of, if you and I are on the same page, is there was a few people from this one group. They said they were with the Republican Party when they were really with Glenn Youngkin. So I think that group is a group that works for the campaign, but it's not direct help under the group. Look at it as if the Crisis Pregnancy Center, for example, endorses Glenn, and then they send people out to do campaigning on behalf of the Crisis Pregnancy Center. They're not directly with the campaign. And the second thing I'll add is, this is just my blunt honest, is I don't think they knew exactly what they were doing. So I think they've been corrected and taught now, and that's the best answer I got.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Laura Hughes, School Board.
Okay, so one is we want to get people to come out and speak at the school board meeting. Tuesday night, you would have to call the clerk, sign up, or you can do it online as well, by noon on Tuesday to speak Tuesday night. You can speak in person or by Zoom. I just forgot to mention it until I was reminded when we were asking for announcements. And I've been asked to speak for 2 different candidates. So first up is Tim Anderson. Everybody knows Tim Anderson. We need to take back the 83rd. As you well know, he teaches concealed carry classes, owns a gun shop, definitely pro 2A. And while we've all been watching our 2A rights, the left has been slowly but surely eroding our First Amendment rights, which is one of the most dangerous things that can happen in a republic. There is nothing we shouldn't be able to talk about or speak an opinion. You do not, it's not that your popular speech is protected, all speech is protected. And frankly, I grew up in a republic and a commonwealth where the attitude was, I may disagree with you, but I'll fight for your right to say it. Tim will fight for your right to say it. He has 2 events coming up. One is here on the 24th. It will be a legislative update, and unfortunately, I don't have the time on there.
6 o'clock, I am.
6 o'clock. And then on the 31st, that's another Wednesday. I know that one is 7 p.m., the DeLorean's at Froggy's. That one is selling out quickly, so you need to get your tickets for that. My second candidate I'm speaking for is Glenn Davis for Lieutenant Governor. And I have to say, I love that Glenn is pro-parental choice on education. That is hugely important to me. You can go back and look at his debate with, I can't remember that woman's name, Delegate Guzman.
Yeah, Guzman.
Guzman.
Elizabeth Guzman.
She's a Democrat. I don't need to learn her name.
Yeah. You're right. They all debate.
They're all the same. Glenn has been endorsed by many local grassroots and across the state local officials, such as Senator Jen Kiggins, Lee Henderson, Tina Senin, school board members Vicki Manning, Jennifer Franklin and myself, Jessica Abbott, Michael Berlucci, and many others. And again, what speaks to me most is his stance on education. That's everybody I got for you today.
Hey, Rob, can I speak to one of them?
Oh, absolutely. Oh.
Robert, we need to take down the Steelers. It's very distracting.
It is. Very disturbing.
Well, Laura is my very good friend, and we'll be good friends after the drive-in convention. I am supporting Winston Sears. I think many people know that. I did a video for her the other day. I just think she represents the fresh voice and the energy that this party needs to win in November. I think she spoke here. I couldn't do better than what she said when she was here, but that's what I'm supporting. We are having a drive-through convention, like a drive-in theater, except you don't get to stay. And it'll be on May 8th. We don't know the location. There will be 5 locations in the 2nd district because we go all the way up to Williamsburg to here on Eastern Shore. So be sure to make sure you know where your locations is. Get your paperwork done. No matter who you're supporting, let me encourage you, no matter which candidate you are supporting, fill out your pre-file. Get your friends to fill out your pre-file. And drive through on May 8th, because if you don't participate, you don't get to choose. And we have, all of our candidates are great, so you don't have a bad choice.
Thank you, John Marks.
One last one, I mean, if I can have a minute, Robert?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm an announced candidate for, I'm Reverend Rich Moose Sells, or some of you know me. Dee, I'm sorry I missed the gig last night, I was doing an interview with CGM.
Oh, okay.
So for 30 minutes. I need some help from the Tidewater Libertarians. I don't know if the Republicans have the guts to do it, but hopefully. A constitutional conservative and city council, whatever, whoever wants to back me, you can talk to me. And the Constitution Party's making a comeback. We're now the Patriots.
You haven't said what you're running for, sir.
That's it. Name it. City council, whatever you guys think I can fill in. I've got some on the internet, and we can discuss it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Now, Mark, the drawing for the 50-50.
And I did not buy a ticket. So this is all legal.
But Elaine's still gonna win.
All right, here we go. 476-855. 855. You? Okay, I told you we were going to split it.
Your
right?
hand's too close to that basket.
Hey, it's the first time
Any other announcements? Listen, there's a lot of our members who are sick and are having problems.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Please keep these folks in your prayers. And a person here has been this morning that we haven't seen in quite some time because she's got a new dog. Is Ronna Marsh, Ronna back there. And so, and her caretaker brought her. So thank you very much for doing that. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless every single one of you. Be careful out there. We are adjourned.
Oh, that's good. Hey, good to see you. Thank you for seeing you.
Hey, Robert, you want me to end the live?